Cool, hi. How many people have seen this before? How many have not seen it? Oh, cool, 50-50. I give you my spiel. Whenever anyone talks to me like I'm talking to you, I always think they don't know what they're talking about. So I want to give you my qualifications. I turned 18 May 5th, 1981. Chris and I graduated June 6th that same year, and July 6th I went to work here at Holy Cross. So I was barely 18. As you can see, that's 32 years ago. I've seen a lot of good stuff electricity can do, and I've seen a lot of bad stuff electricity can do. Today we're going to talk about the bad. I do 5th grade classes. Usually in the 5th grade they learn about gas, water, power. They know about the atom. So 5th grade, every question I ask you today is 5th grade level, so you better get them. The other cool thing about this is any question you have about electricity, I can show you right here. We don't have to do case of H times pi r square. Please ask me questions, it helps me out, and I can show you. Okay? Let's go. I'm going to do some accidents. Well, I'm going to do some basic electricity, a couple accidents. We'll do some more basic electricity, and then I'll show you a whole bunch of accidents that happen nationwide every day in America. Cool? Everybody say this, if you can see it. 186,000 miles a second. Say it again.
186,000 miles a second.
We're going to say that a lot today. We're going to do it all again one more time. 186,000 miles a second. That's the speed of light. Electricity is just a little bit behind it. So first 5th grade question is, what is 186,000 miles from here, Glenwood Springs? Moon's not quite. Any more guesses? I did this for a 5th grade class. This old science teacher, I'm like, he shouldn't even be alive, let alone teaching. And he comes up after the class and he said 5 times around the earth. And I said, what? And he goes, that's the answer to your question. So I looked it up on my cell phone. From pole to pole, it's 24901.55 miles. And around the equator is 2485982. So it's further pole to pole than the equator, but 5 times around the earth in 1 second. So forget that, just go with China, 1001, we're there. Very fast. Cool? Let's do some accents. This is my little village. The star of my show is Bernadette. If it was a little boy, his name would be Ashton. This one's already burnt. If you guys were 5th graders, she'd be all nice and pretty and ready to go, okay? There's something wrong with my village. Usually it takes an older person to see it. Don't be offended if you're the first one to see it. Anyone? Shannon? What's happened here is the aerial antenna has blown into the overhead power line. This, you guys, 14,400 volts, exactly what we have here at Holy Cross. This scale. So we're going to learn a little bit about electricity. Bernadette's on the ground, she's safe. She goes from the ground to the ladder, she's safe. She's on the house, she's safe. This whole house is energized 14,400 volts. It's not till she comes in contact with the aerial antenna touching the overhead power line and the ladder touching the ground that she's going to get burnt. All electricity wants to do is get to ground. That's how we use it. We turn on the light switch, we let a little go through the light bulb, goes to ground, we use it. Silicone chip in our computers, silicone stops it, remembers how much went through, goes to ground. That's how we use electricity. That's all it wants to do. We'll explain that a little later. Ground, ladder, house. She gets between the aerial antenna and the ladder touches the ground, she gets burnt. And she gets burnt at? Didn't take very long, did it? She's done with that. She's going to go climb in her tree house. Trees are very conductive. We'll talk about that later. She doesn't notice this service wire going to her house, 120-240, bared off spot. She climbs through there. She also gets electrocuted. So my point is here, way, way less voltage, same speed. Okay? Cool. Let's talk about electricity real quick. All you fifth graders? Tell me real quick the parts of an atom. Proton, neutron, electron. In the center of the atom is the nucleus. Nucleus is made up of protons, which are positively charged, that's how they get their name, and neutrons, which are neutral. Around the nucleus is a wonderful word, electron. Electrons are negatively charged. If I have an atom with the exact same number of protons as electrons, the positive charge holds the negative charge in like a magnet. It's like a solar system, they're going around there. So the positive holds the negative. That atom is very stable, it's an insulator. Glass, porcelain, rubber, all very good insulators. If you're in the fifth grade, I pass these around. Tell them it's very special rubber from Cambodia. You can't get it, but you guys are all going to handle them today, or you did this morning. Insulator. Some electrons have up to 400 times more electrons on the outside. What happens is the positive charge can't hold the negative charges in, and they fly off. As they go around the solar system, they fly off. That's called a free electron. Another good word we use with electricity. That's a conductor. Gold, copper, aluminum all have way more electrons than they have protons. Make sense? So we start the generator in Craig. The free electrons flow from one atom to the other. 186,000 miles a second. They get here easy. They go back and forth that fast. That's alternating current. You've all heard that word? That's how the water gets back to the lake, kind of. It's not really how it works, but that's how it works. 186,000 miles a second, it does it very easy. Everybody cool with that? Questions? Let's do some more accidents. This happens all the time. Happened when I was in high school at Canyon Creek on Public Services line. Guy was killed on our line about, 7 years ago, I guess now. Very same accident. But our deal is with Bernadette, she's gone, she's absent, okay. 3 kids are walking across a field and they spook up a rabbit and it runs in an irrigation pipe. They want to get that rabbit. How are you going to get that rabbit? Stick it up. Kids say throw a rock down it. They say crawl in there. I go, it's 4 inches around. Pretty soon these 3 kids, same thing. They're going to pick up the pipe, slam it down. 2 of them, the third one's going to grab the rabbit. When they did that, they didn't notice the high voltage power line above them. I'm going to show you something else about electricity. Right now this pipe's taking all the electrons to ground. So it's at ground potential. It's like our neutral wire. We'll talk about that a little bit later. So Bernadette's all right because she's at the same potential, even though 14,400 volts is thrown through this pipe. But the minute they pick the pipe up, she becomes the pipe. She becomes the path to ground and she gets electrocuted. So when this happened, one boy lost a foot, one boy lost a hand, and the other one lost a leg. What happened to the rabbit? Fine? That's correct. The rabbit doesn't become the path to ground. Only if the electrons go through your body, which we'll explain here in a minute, do you get burnt. Make sense? Let's go one more. Bernadette gets a little bit older. She buys herself a cool Mustang car. She's headed to Glenwood Springs High School on a nice winter day when the roads are icy. She's texting, which is a big no-no with you fifth graders. Slips on the ice, hits the power pole, breaks this insulator, phase wire comes down on her car. Everybody cool with what's going on? Bernadette's in the car, she's safe as a kitten. How come? What's that? Not part of the circuit is the correct answer. Everybody says rubber tires. Not true. Steel belted radials. If a dump truck gets in our power line, the tire's the first thing to go. She's not part of the circuit. She's not the path to ground. Till she steps out of the car and becomes the path to ground, she's safe. Stay in the car. If it's not on fire, stay in the car. Call Holy Cross. We'll make sure the power line's off. You'll be safe. Cell phone will work fine because it's not part of the circuit. Okay? It's happened in Pennsylvania. Family of 7. Mustang's taking off. Phase wire fell down on the car in the house. The mom freaked out. She told the kids to get out of the house. I don't blame her. House is on fire. There's a phase wire on it. All 7 kids were getting into a station wagon next to the car that had the phase wire on it. One kid opened the door, touched the other car next to it, energizing the car they were getting in, killed all of them instantly. So my point is, if I had 7 Bernadettes here, everyone would get their share of electricity in that car. There's path of least resistance. That's true, but I'll show you that later. Cool? Struggling? Okay, let's go to the kite. Kites, you've all seen them? All have them? $4.59 kite. Kite string's conductive. Walmart now makes a kite string with a metal filament into it that keeps it from breaking. Kite string by itself is conductive. That's how we found electricity, key in a kite. Okay, this kite's on the line. How are you going to get it down? 5th graders. What's that? Leave it there is a good answer. If your local firemen come out and they haven't had my class, they're going to use a ladder. Bad idea. Saw that before. How about a tree branch? Knock it down. Trees are very conductive. A lot of our power outages around here come from trees. That's why we have breakers. I'll explain it later, but trees are very conductive. 2x4 dry wood steel thing, 14,400 volts. How you can get that kite? That's the correct answer and the right answer at the end. This happened in Colorado Springs. 11-year-old kid. This exact thing happened. He was going to climb up this pole, arm for arm, 260 feet, get his kite, arm for arm back. 11 years old. There's a shed built under the guy wire. He got on the shed, got a hold of the guy wire, swung over, phone, cable TV, perfect ladder. We've all seen poles like that. Gets up, gets between the phase and the neutral. It's electrocuted. This kid, 11 years old, with enough gumption to think he could do that, lost both arms and a leg. 11 years old. Spent the rest of his life with one leg for a $4.99 kite. Horrible story. How are you going to get the kite? Call Holy Cross. Yes, we'll gladly come get your kite. We got all the cool trucks, cool sticks. We'll get your kite any day of the week. You see tennis shoes on there all the time nowadays, $150. Hard thing to go home and tell your parents. Call Holy Cross, we'll get your shoes. No, free of charge. We're a non-profit organization. We get the kite though. Okay, I'm going to explain this loss in arms and legs. Everybody rub your hands together. Dave? All right, let's do this. Rub them. What are they doing? They're getting warm. How come? Friction causes heat. If you could rub them together at 186,000 miles a second, what would happen to your arms? They would burn off. Just on your way home tonight, put them out on the street at 70 miles an hour, see what happens to your hands. Friction causes heat. An electrical burn, all fire comes from heat, oxygen, and fuel. Yes? Get a shock. We'll talk about that. That's induction. Good question. Friction causes heat. Heat, oxygen, and fuel cause a fire. There's not much fuel in me. Running through this wall is a power line. It's running very cool. Not much heat. Feeding my village. How come it's so cool? Low resistance. Low resistance. Insulation is the correct answer. It's a very good conductor, has lots of free electrons, runs cool. There'll be 4 inches of ice on power lines, drags them down, you've all seen it. The very second I touch that, it becomes hot as the sun. I become hot as the sun. I'm a conductor, poor conductor. You guys all have electric stoves, toaster ovens. The friction of the electrons going through that poor conductor heat it up. Rodney has very little fuel, 90% water, but the minute I touch that, it excites the electrons in my body, hot as the sun, it's that fast. I'm going to burn for 1 week. So when a lineman gets burned, everyone's like, how's Rodney? How's Rodney? You don't know for 1 week. It's like Wendell taking the hamburger off the grill, still cooking. So Monday I'm going to burn some more. It's just a pinhole, we'll talk about that later. Burns the flesh, they take out the burnt flesh. Tuesday there's more. Wednesday there's not enough muscle to use that joint, they cut it off. By Thursday I may lose it here. That's why people lose their arms and legs in an electrical accident. It's not that they touch the power line and their arm blows off. It burns for 1 week, they lose that much meat, if you will, in their joints. Cool? What else do I got? Let's do some more accidents until I do my job. This happens all the time. Lost my microphone. Happens every day. We've had accidents like this at Holy Cross. Happens every day, but for us fifth graders, scenario is here, construction crew left their crane on the playground, rained and rained, the tons and tons of that crane made it lean over in the mud. It's touching the power line. Bernadette wants to come play on it. She doesn't hear this going on. Goes to climb on it, gets electrocuted. Comes the path to ground. Path of least resistance, you see that? Bob's operating the crane, doesn't pay attention, swings it in the power line. What happened to Bob? How come? It's not the path, I'm doing my job. Frank's down here holding on to the 2x4s. What happens? What should Bob do? Stay on there. The minute he gets off, he's going to get electrocuted. Tires have nothing to do with it. When a trackhoe digs up our underground power, which we'll talk about in a minute, solid steel on the ground, the whole thing's energized 14,400 volts. Cool? Let's talk about underground while we have time. Okay, in my power line, 3 things I need. I need a conductor, insulator, and a ground. So my conductor's here. 4 feet of dry air insulates this. Air is a conductor, we'll talk about that in a minute, but dry air, this 4 feet insulates this phase from the other. Okay, neutral wire. Neutral takes the imbalance back to the generator, so to speak. So Paul comes home, throws his clothes in the dryer, he's using a little bit of electricity. Keith comes home, starts welding, he's using a little more. I come home, dry my hair, I'm using very little. Now I'm talking about all the houses from here to Aspen. The difference of what we're using comes back in here. It's 14,400 volts, but it's at ground potential. When us linemen climb up there, we might get a little shock, but it's like that pipe. 14,400 volts, ground potential. It's not till we cut that wire and become the wire that we would get burnt. Make sense? Inside, underground, exact same thing. You guys will be touching this today. Conductor, insulator. This is a semicon that keeps the electromagnetic field equal, and the neutral. Exact same power is in the underground as the overhead. Okay. Oh, I guess got a question for myself. Cool. Okay. So, guys, green boxes, everybody have them? Seen them? 5th grade? Yes? All right, good answer. Where are the green boxes? In your driveway, in your backyard. There's little green boxes, there's big green boxes. Where's the big green boxes? Where? Usually on the street corner. I'm fortunate, almost every school I do, there's a switchgear right in the front of the school. What's happening there is big green boxes have fuses in them. So an overhead riser pole has a fuse, comes from one house to the other house, switchgear. Switchgears have fuses in one side, they have great big switches in them. So us linemen, we move the power from one city to the other. We close the switch, we open it, you never even see it blink. The other side of that is a fuse coming out, going transformer to transformer. little green boxes take the 14,400 volts, make it to 120, 240 use in your house, just like an overhead transformer. So there's 5 to 7 houses on an underground box. That's why they're in your front yards. They're feeding your house. On this power cable that I just showed you in the green box is this load break elbow. You guys will see these today too. Load break elbow, all it is a 14,400 volt plug-in. Just like I plug this in the wall to get to 120, 14,400 volts. If I have a little case of the new alarm, don't plug it all the way on. Car hits it, snow plows knock them on their backs all the time. Anything disturbs that transformer, it can dislodge this. I've seen them right against this, metal to ground, sitting right there hot. If we leave them in there, 14,400 volts, load break elbow. Cool? So back to Bernadette. She gets in her cool Mustang car. Am I doing that right? I'm starting to lose my mind. Here shouldn't need to be tight, it shouldn't be overhead. She's texting, she's driving in the snow, headed to Glenwood High. I might have to change her name to Becca, Liv. Sorry. She misses the power pole this time, crashes in, knocks the underground transformer over. Okay? What should she do? Stay in the car if she thinks she's involved with a power line. If she gets out of the car, she's going to become the path to ground. Any firemen coming to rescue her and don't know that that's involved with an underground thing, they're all 7 of them are going to get their share. Both car accidents. So I always tell the firemen, have your dispatch, call our dispatch. People can turn the power on us with a phone. We lock and tag that out. We ourselves don't touch these power lines till we have an open. So if they call, 1, we know where to go. 2, we won't energize it on them. I'll talk about that later. Got it? Okay, another scenario. We're at the construction site. I use a maintainer. I could use a backhoe. Like I said, solid steel track hoe digs up our power line. It's going to be energized, 14,400 volts. I use a maintainer because we're supposed to be 30 inches deep. Not always the case. So in this case, Bob scrapes up the underground cable, cuts it, pulls it down the conduit, pulls the elbow off the transformer. Okay? Bob's in the piece of equipment. What should he do? Why? Won't become the path to ground. He's like a bird on the wire. He's energized, but the electrons are not flowing through his body. Just like us in our bucket trucks, our rubber gloves stops the electrons from flowing through our body. Talk more about that later. He gets out of the piece of equipment, comes the path to ground. Anyone touching this piece of equipment is going to get their share like the car. Now all of a sudden we have a locate problem. Wasn't located right. So we call the locator out. He's going to go recook onto the transformer. He's going to get electrocuted, pulled the elbow off. Stay away. The switch gears, the big boxes, it's a big box over open air conductors, aluminum bars in there. So same scenario, you're playing on it, Betty's jumping on it, bends it in there, touches it. What happened to Betty? Nothing. As long as she stays on the box, she's not the path to ground. But everybody touching it's going to get their share of electricity. Cool? Let's talk about lightning, and I'll go down my list. Any questions? Shannon? Lightning step potential. This thing is called the Jacob's ladder. I call it the Frankenstein thing. Lost my other jumper right here. Okay, what's going to happen is I'm going to energize this. The 4 feet of dry air that I talked about before is going to insulate it. But once I start that arc, once I ionize the air, it's going to become the conductor. The air is going to be conducted 14,400 volts. It's hard to break that arc. That's why we have load break tools and stuff that you guys will be touching today. When we open an air brake switch, we have our gloves on because if the wind blows the arc into the pole, it's 14,400 volts in the air. And then we'll talk about lightning step potential. Okay? We start over, energized. I'm going to start the arc. It's hard to break. Very susceptible to wind. That's where all your electrical fires come from with the trees, the arc. 14.4, same heat, but it's in the air. Bad connection in your house, catches the wood on fire. Ionized air. Pretty cool that? Quit talking. Okay, how's lightning work? 5th grade. That's how you get hurt. How does it work? All right, I'm on that. I did this at the Rocky Mountain School, and this kid was like giving me these formulas and stuff, and I'm like, very good. Clouds bump together. The friction causes positive charges. So you got clouds full of positive charges. Like I said, all electricity wants to do is get to ground. Same when you walk across the carpet, build up a bunch of positive charges. The minute it can't take it, goes to the negative in the ground. Strikes across. Ionizes the air becomes a conductor. Cloud to cloud, same thing. Once that lightning hits, it dissipates that energy out in a circle. Just like when I throw a rock in a lake, that energy is dissipated out in rings. Same thing when lightning hits the ground. So forget that. When our phase wire hits the ground, for math's sake, it's 14,000, 13, 12, 11. You guys ever hear about lightning striking about 5, 6 cows die? Those unfortunate cows are in the step potential. So same with me, if I'm standing here, little Rodney, if I'm in that step potential, I'm going to get 1,000 volts up one leg and down the other. Very dangerous, something we deal with every day. Same with the firemen coming to rescue Bernadette in the car. They step across those rings of energy dissipate and they could be hurt severely. Call the power company, have the power shut off. Step potential. Questions? She's got one. Yes. Uh-huh. It doesn't help. Correct. That's also induction. I'll talk about that later. Let's start with breakers. You guys ever be sitting at home, the lights blink once, they blink twice, they blink 3 times, power goes out. That's our breakers working to keep your power on and working properly. Better get my gloves before I turn the power on. What happens is, I lost Bernadette too. Tree falls in a power line, falls to the ground. That breaker just shut everybody off, all the way from here to Marble. Tree cleared itself, temporary fault, we call that, fell to the ground, turns it back on, everybody stays on. That's what we want. Tree falls in a power line, stays once, stays 2 blinks in your house, it's supposed to blow the fuse cutout, and then 30, 40 homes, whole subdivision goes out. Rodney, unfortunately, has to go out on double time, cut the tree off the line, make a bunch of money. Tree stays in the main line, 1, 2, 3, 4, it's gonna lock the circuit out till we find the tree. Same with another accident, happens every day. Bernadette wants to cut a tree down in her backyard. She's gonna be holding the chainsaw. Trees are very conductive. Okay, let's say Davey and I go out at night. We're looking for this tree in the middle of pitch black, all the frying pan. How are we going to find it? Pretty soon we start flipping that switch. I'm like, can you see it? Can you see it? We're hoping you call in and go, holy crap, my house is on fire. And then we know where the power outage is. We've got all this technology David, we got amps, we got fault indicators, we use all that, but sooner or later you gotta flip the power on. Scenario is, you're watching the Bronco game, your kid comes in, he pounds a nail in the wall, room goes out, what are you gonna do? You beat the kid. I always tell firemen, use your hose, but then you're gonna go flip the breaker on. When the power goes out, you flip the breaker on. And that's what we do with 14,400 volts. So like I said, have your dispatch, call our dispatch. One, we'll know where you're at. Two, we won't flip the power on you. We can lock and tag out people in Denver from turning the power on us. Please call. Breakers. Dispatch, we covered that. One shot, when we go out and work on the power lines, us guys are up there in the bucket, we put it on one shot. That way it's only gonna operate that breaker once. It's for our own safety. Mike Dean says it best, 186,000 miles a second, I'm 6 feet tall, breaker goes 60th of a second, whoop-de-doo. It's to clear the circuit, not give you 3 shots. Got breakers, we got one shot, we got heat, oxygen, fuel. Volts and amps. Volts are pressure, amps is amount. I got a 15 amp fuse in my car. You guys ever been jumping your car and you slam the hood and it melts that 1/aught cable? That's 12 volts, 15 amps. We're talking 14,400 volts pushing the same 15 amps. Amount and pressure. It's 2 different things. It's like water. If we turn on a hose and run it for miles and miles, it's not going to come out the end. That's why we have high voltage transmission lines. Feeding them, it's because we have line loss and we can only put the house so far from the thing. Same as water. Make sense? Volts and amps. Pinhole in this glove will kill me. How come? Saw me air test my gloves. We'll show you today how to do it. Pinhole will kill me. Same as my bare hand. 5th graders? No. Okay. It's said that the nucleus, if it's a football stadium, an electron is a football a mile out. That's the size difference. Atom is the smallest thing known to man. Electron is the smallest thing known to man. Billions go through a pinhole, kill me just the same. Very tiny, very fast, very helpful, very deadly. Step potential we talked about. 480 street lights, induction. I'm going to show you the path of least resistance. I'm going to try. Lost my jumper. I'm going to answer 3 more questions, I'll be done. See what happens. Same scenario, Bernadette's texting, knocks the power line down on her car. Fireman comes to rescue, he's like, what's going on over there? Well, this right now is taking the path of least resistance, but the minute he goes to rescue her, he's going to become the path of least resistance. So just because it's not right there doesn't mean that it's not going to become there. So like I was saying with the 7 kids, 1 kid's not going to take it all. That'd be like our biggest house taking all our power. Path of least resistance is real, but everyone's going to get their share. Induction. We've had a lot of accidents here at Holy Cross. With induction, underground cable can be induced. What's happened here is I got a bare wire sitting on insulators. Nothing connected to it. No jumper connected to it. Same as when we're hot stringing, we lay out the hot phases on the side and we pull the new ones in. Bare, no electricity connected to it. But the electrons traveling in this wire, 186,000 miles a second, excite the electrons in this bare wire. That's how a transformer works. Never touches each other, induces. But if I go up there think this wire is dead. Right here is 14.4 to ground. Here's the induction. Can you hear it? So the other two wires have induced the bare wire. So that's why we ground them. Not grounded, not dead, to protect ourselves from induction. Miles of this adds up to a lot. 480 volts. 480 volts is all your large power, any grocery store, any ski area. This building's 480. It's very efficient, that's why we use it. 480 volts, if you grab it, it makes your muscles contract and you can't get away from it. It's a very dangerous voltage. You ever hear about a coal miner goes down the mine, sizzled there all night? 480 volts. Very dangerous. We don't direct meter it, we step it down. In the old days, the firemen used to pull the meter to get the power out of the house so they could start fighting the fire. I always tell them these tiny little wires ain't feeding city market. So they don't do that anymore because of this reason, but just because you pull the meter doesn't kill the house. Okay? Street lights. Street lights have transformers that sun starts to go down, two lights come on. Boom, it's going to feed those two lights. Sun goes down a little more, turns on 4 blocks. It's going to pump more power to those 4 volts. Once the lights, 4 blocks, once the sun goes all the way down, it's going to feed all the lights. So I could have tiny little wires sticking out of a street light. If I go grab them, it's going to go, holy crap, the whole town's dark, and it's going to pump as much amperage and voltage as it needs to feed that little wire. People are hurt real bad with tiny little wires. Street lights, be careful. Did path of least resistance. Size doesn't matter. Like I said, a kite string linemen have gone up, done their job, taken their gloves and sleeves off, went to get a kite wire, been burnt. Size doesn't matter. It's going to burn that fuse till it's gone. This is the smallest wire we have. 3 of these in a 3-phase power line could feed half a Carbondale easy. So think about that. All that heat, all those elevators, all those motors are in this tiny little wire. If that was a drive shaft on a truck, you wouldn't touch it for nothing. That much power is in this wire. One more, Mitch. Skirts. You guys ever notice how transmission lines have great big bells, then they get smaller, smaller, smaller? This right here is a termination in a switch gear, or the epoxylators that you guys are going to be using. We have 6 skirts. So 14,400 volts, dead ground. That's only about 9 inches. The electrons have to travel over each and every skirt to get there. That's why the skirts get bigger, the more electricity. That, if I add that up, it's 4 feet. That's the smallest fiberglass stick we can touch it with. That's why there's more skirts for more power. Questions? None? Thank you.